she's insisting that he tried. And we believe that the conflict rules allow him to be here.
District Court where?
Civil domestic violence court is a 50C restraining order hearing, and I moved to continue on the grounds that we didn't anticipate last week that this trial would be going on today, at least closing arguments until the snowstorm hit and an unexpected witness. And she denied my motion to continue, Your Honor. And I've let Mr. Zellinger know I was going to approach you about this. And she ultimately said I need to be back whenever we have lunch to try the case over there. And I'm worried about.
Which judge was it?
Your Honor?
Which judge was it?
Judge Green.
Okay.
In courtroom 5A.
All right. You notify Judge Green in 5A that I'll release Mr. Talton when the jury verdict is returned in this case.
Thank you, Your Honor.
He'll be available. He'll be available to try his case as soon as that occurs. And
Courtroom 5A. Thank you, Your Honor.
Just notify our clerk and that. Unfortunately, I'm unable to predict exactly when that will be, but I'll certainly let her know as soon as he's available.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, Counsel, I've Sheriff, can you hand them written copies of the instructions? Thank you. Counsel, I've made no changes to the instructions except those that I allowed by motion on Fridays, so that instructions will read as I had indicated that they would read. It's about 8 pages, I think. The only significant major change from what I'd previously given you was allowing the state's motion to include the language on the accessory after the fact to murder that the defendant would be guilty of accessory after the fact to murder if the state proves beyond a reasonable doubt that she either concealed evidence that Laura Atkinson had been murdered or assisted Grant Hayes in disposing of dismembered parts of the body of Laura Atkinson, or both. Anything further with regard to the instructions?
Yes.
There being none, we got all jurors? Okay, all the jurors are here. We're ready to proceed with closing arguments. The jury is with the defendant. Excuse me, the state to open and close. You've indicated that you would be asking for, that you would be closing, and you'd be making 2 arguments.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay.
And the one other issue that I think is still before the court is the defendant had some trial exhibits that they sought to enter the other day, and we sort of waited to respond to that until we could get a copy of exactly what it was. And several of these, I don't know if it's going to come up at closing if you really need to do it now, but several of these items I don't believe were identified or introduced. I think some of them were identified and introduced through the state's case in chief, but some of them haven't been. I would object to their admission. And I don't know if it would be proper to do that now.
I think I reserved ruling on your objection until you made it. I allowed them in for the record only, and then just indicated that I would rule on your objection if you told me a specific item that you contended was not admissible.
Sure.
Tell me what you contend is not admissible.
Number 18, I don't believe there was any evidence of the eviction notice. I don't believe that was ever identified.
Of the what?
Of the eviction notice. It was, I guess.
Okay, overall.
Number 46 is listed as a luminol demonstration. I don't know that, I honestly don't know what that is. I think there was a document that was shown to a witness about something about luminol, and if that's what that is, then I don't have a huge objection to that, but I don't know what sort of demonstration it refers to. And then 53, 56 are the drain plug from the John boat and the hutch, and I don't believe that those items have been introduced. 57 and 58 are Amanda Hayes' arrest report with her New York driver's license and her record check with her New York driver's license. I don't believe there's been any evidence of those or introduced.
The objections to those are overruled. The reference to drain, is that the photographs of the drain plug?
I don't know. It just says drain plug and John boat and hutch, and obviously the hutch hasn't been brought in here.
Can y'all tell me what that is?
It's the photograph that was identified with the U-Haul blankets on it.
I know that the objections to the hutch is overruled, but I am concerned about the drain plug.
The photograph, but it's not important. Whatever. I'm not going to argue that.
All right. With regard to the drain plug, the objection is overruled.
And then, Your Honor, I've been told that a couple of these things that we had spoke about are pictures, not the actual items. Number 59 is the only other one that we would object to, and that's the John Sargent transcript from the Grant Hayes trial.
That was the page that Mr. Sargent read from to the jury regarding his answer to to Ms. Holt's question in the Grant Hayes trial. Ms. Gaskins asked him if he recalled that question and the answer, and he approached him with the transcript, and Mr. Sargent actually read the answer to the jury. So that would be the...
But it's apparently the portion that you wanted is in evidence.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'll allow only that portion which the witness read from the witness stand. I recall that, but it was very narrow. It was only a page or so.
Right.
So I'd let that portion of the transcript be received. Any other portion of the transcript is not received in evidence.
I didn't make a note, and I'm sure you made a comment about the luminol demonstration. I believe that was a photograph that Mr. Gaskins showed CCBI agent, I believe it was Shannon Quick, regarding how luminol lights up. And she identified it as something she herself had accessed from the internet before and spoke of the
All right.
exhibit.
The objection's overruled. Let it be received. Anything else?
No.
Okay. That resolves the remaining issues, evidentiary issues. We resolved the remaining evidentiary issues. We resolved the jury charge issues, if any, and ready to argue this case to the jury. The state's going to close with two arguments. The defendant will open. How many speakers will we have? Just one? Okay. Very well, Mr. Gaskin, the jury will be with you when we bring the jury in. Anything else?
Honor, I would like to speak from the lectern, and also I believe the chainsaw, the skill saw is up here someplace. I'd like for it to be someplace where I can get to.
Can you get to it? Okay. Can you move the lectern over for him, Sheriff? And Just put it wherever you can get to it, Mr. Gaskins.
I just don't want to run right in the courtroom.
And the small lectern will. If there are items that y'all intend to make reference to and want to use, you just need to figure out where they are so you don't have to stop and hunt for them for 5 minutes. If you're going to use reference to photographs that are going to be shown on the backboard there, you need to, the screen there, you need to make sure you've got it queued up somewhere in your computer so you can do that without any significant delay. Otherwise, there'll be these long, awkward pauses that doesn't help anybody. All right. We've all done this before, so we know the protocol, we know the rules, we know what you can and can't say. You can't argue outside the evidence. You can only argue reasonable inferences from the evidence that the jury's heard. You can't state your own opinion about anything. You can state your contention about what you say and contend the evidence shows, but you can't say, I think this, I think that, as we all know. It's not about you. It's about the evidence and the law, or the absence of any evidence. So we all know that. Let's make sure we follow that protocol, otherwise there are going to be objections, and nothing is more distracting in an argument than have somebody object. Okay. Sheriff, ask the jury to come in, please. Morning, folks. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your service. As typical, we had a couple of last-minute technical matters to resolve, but we're ready to proceed now. We've reached that time at the trial in which you've heard all the evidence. It'll be that evidence that you review and evaluate and determine the truth of, and let your verdict speak the truth in this matter. The rules of the court now allow the attorneys to make closing remarks to you, closing arguments. They're not witnesses, they're not giving you additional evidence. What they say to you is not additional evidence or additional information. What they say to you is their contentions about what they contend and say the evidence shows or doesn't show in this case. And it's been a lengthy trial, and so there's a lot of evidence, and they will spend some time talking to you about what they contend the evidence shows or doesn't show in this matter, and what they contend based upon their positions your verdict ought to be. The purpose of the closing remarks are to help you in evaluating their side of it and viewing their side of it, making sure that you fully understand and appreciate their side of it when you go back and to deliberate on what this is all about, what the evidence in fact shows, and what the law requires that you do as a juror in the case. When they finish, I have about 8 pages of instructions that I will give you written copies of, and I will read to you. It will probably take me about 15 minutes or so to do that, and then we'll submit the case to you. I would ask you to give the attorneys your careful consideration and attention at this time. The defendant having offered evidence under the rules of the court, the defendant has the opportunity to speak to you first, and then the state's attorneys will speak after Mr. Gaskins concludes. As I understand it, Mr. Gaskins will be making the argument on behalf of the defendant, and the attorneys for the state both will speak to you and divide their time. Mr. Gaston, the jury is with you.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope each of you had a good weekend. I would like to begin my remarks to you by talking about the most sacred principle of law in the criminal justice system, the presumption of innocence. Everyone who is charged with a criminal offense, male or female, black or white, is entitled to the presumption of innocence. The state must prove each and every element of its case to you beyond a reasonable doubt before you can return a verdict of guilty to either of the charges with which she is charged. Now, let me read to you a statement of the legal definition of reasonable doubt. This is the definition that you will apply to the evidence in this case. A reasonable doubt is a doubt based on reason and common sense, arising out of some or all of the evidence that has been presented, or lack or sufficiency of the evidence, as the case may be. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt is proof that fully satisfies or entirely convinces you of the defendant's guilt. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our contention that the state of North Carolina has failed to prove to you that Amanda Hayes is guilty of either first-degree murder or accessory after the fact. Now, we already know that Grant Hayes has been tried and convicted of first-degree murder, and the state contends to you that in some way that Amanda helped him commit that crime. We contend that that is absolutely not true, that there is no evidence to support that at all, that that's never been what this case has really been about. What this case is about is whether or not Amanda is innocent or guilty of the charge of being accessory after the fact. Now, the two charges, first-degree murder and accessory after the fact, are polar opposites of each other. They are diametrically opposed. On the one hand, the state of North Carolina says that Amanda in some way participated in killing Laura, but on the other hand, and in the same breath, they turn around and they say that Amanda didn't kill Laura, that Grant killed Laura, and that Amanda did something to conceal the crime and assisted Grant in some way in disposing of the body. Direct opposites of each other. Judge Stevens will tell you that it is legally impossible to convict someone of both of those criminal offenses because they're complete opposites of each other. We contend to you that you should return a verdict of not guilty as to both offenses. Now, Judge Stevens, in his instructions to you, will explain in fairly great detail the various different legal principles that could or may apply to this case. And I'm not going to go through with you now what his explanation is as to the different nuances that are involved here. And the reason is because we don't contend that she might or could be guilty of one or the other of these offenses. We contend to you that she is not guilty of either offense. Purely and simply that the state has failed to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt each and every element of either offense. And that the bottom line is that you should return the verdict of not guilty. Now, when I began my remarks to you earlier in the trial, I told you that this was a case about a sociopath and his two victims. Grant Hayes is a classic example of a sociopath. On the one hand, he is a talented musician. He's witty, charming, charismatic. But on the other hand, he's controlling, manipulative, domineering, and worst of all, he is dangerous. I'll talk more about Grant Hayes, but first I want to talk to you about his two victims. The first victim is Laura. We know that Laura had become involved with Grant and had become enamored and involved in a romantic relationship with him, and the two of them had two children, little Grant and Joan. Laura had some problems early in her life that led her to believe that it was in the best interest of the boys that they stay with Grant during the weekdays and that they stay with her during the weekends. But as her life improved, and it improved once she became separate and apart from Grant, things started getting better for Laura. She got a job. She was working, very much involved with the church. Things for Laura were getting good. When things changed for Laura, she decided that the time had come for her to challenge Grant on the custody agreement that they had previously reached. She wanted something more time with her children than she had previously agreed to. That led to a very bitter custody dispute that existed between Grant and Laura. It didn't involve Amanda. Amanda was a woman who has spent her entire life looking out for and caring for other people, doing things to improve her life. She looked out for her mother when her mother was sick. She looked out for her daughter Shay and insisted that she get a high school education. When her husband Nicky became injured, became paralyzed in the swimming accident, Amanda spent every night of the week with him for months while he was in the hospital. And then when he was transferred to rehab, where he eventually passed away, she was there every minute, always looking out for Nicky. She went to Texas to help her sister, Karen Berry, when she was involved in an automobile accident. When she became involved with Grant, she was the person that looked out for little Grant and Gentle. Grant was off traveling around the world, either doing musical gigs or pretending to do musical gigs. We don't know which. But we know that Amanda was a good-hearted, loving person who looked out for other people and also did things to improve her own life. She obtained a cosmetology license. She obtained a real estate license. She participated in a program called Momentum, which is a self-improvement program. She was doing things to help improve her life. She was doing things to help others. At some point, she was living in New York and traveled to the St. John's in the Virgin Islands. And while she was there, she ran an art store. She was happy. It was a good life for her. She was very content in that environment. Let me change directions now and talk to you about Grant Hayes. What I would like to do is, in a long trial, is you tend to forget what happened at the first. 3 weeks later, you The tendency sometimes is to start from the back and go to the front. But it's important that you start from the front and you go to the end. And that's the way that I would like to discuss the evidence in this case with you, by beginning at the beginning of the story. Grant Hayes was a man who had manipulated and controlled everyone with whom he was ever involved. But mostly we know about his involvement initially with Laura. You heard from one of the very first witnesses in this case was Heidi Schumacher. Heidi described Grant as the personification of evil. She was the most evil man that she had ever met. He had beaten Laura. He had done everything he could do to isolate her from her friends and from her family. At some point, Heidi herself became so concerned for her own welfare that she went out and bought a pistol. And she got a concealed weapon permit in the event that she needed to protect herself from Grant. She told you that Laura had told her that if anything ever happens to me, if it's thought that I have committed suicide or I have disappeared, go look for Grant, because Grant is the one who did it. What I would like to do is to read to you, and I promise not to belabor this issue, but I'd like to read to you some of the comments that Laura made in her parenting history report. You'll recall that that Dr. Calloway had done the parenting history report, and that as part of that report that she had asked both Grant and Laura to prepare a history of their relationship together. I'm going to go through here, and I won't take long, but I want you to get an idea of how this case started and what Laura had to say about Grant. Bear in mind that Laura had been with Grant for 4 years and knew him better than anybody. These are some of the things that she had to say about him in that parenting history report. Grant told me that he was molested as a child, that he had had sex with 200 women. Grant associates regularly with pimps, drug dealers, drug abusers, and murderers. Grant appears to feel very strongly that the U.S. is run by aliens and that a government collapse is imminent. He apparently believes that there will be either a spaceship or an underground system of tunnels that will be reserved for only the very rich, famous, necessary individuals to live in while Armageddon happens on Earth. Grant is very manipulative and will pretend things happened that didn't, and that things that didn't happen did. I have witnessed Grant behave like a bully on several occasions. On one occasion, he held a knife on a fellow musician during a gig at Jack Astor's because the musician used the F word while speaking to Grant about his lack of timeliness in arriving at the gig. I have witnessed Grant lie nearly every day about everything from our marital status to his education level to what he ate for dinner the night before to what record company is calling him, and just about everything in between. Grant blacks out sometimes and acts odd and violent. He says he has no recollection of this. I don't know whether the times I experienced with him were drug-induced or not. I don't remember the dialogue exactly. I remember feeling as though I would be in serious danger if I didn't take preventive measures. I've never hidden eyes from anyone in my life prior to this point, and feel that I was in danger quite like this. After penning his biography, he proceeded to shoot me repeatedly with an air-pump BB gun. I think Grant is delusional. At one point, he told me he was a time traveler. He told me that beings from other planets follow him around the world. He has told me that these beings run the United States. I myself have been alienated from my friends and family. Everyone I knew was either really dumb, too fat, not good enough to be around, according to Grant. Grant made it clear that he thought that I was white trash, that it was as if no matter what I did, I was always wrong, trashy, or incompetent, or not enough. After a very poor decision on my part, Grant physically assaulted me. After getting to know him these past few years, Grant's character is crystal clear to me. I think he married Amanda for several reasons that I don't believe she is aware of yet. I believe that Grant convinced Amanda that I'm crazy and he urgently needs help saving the children from me. Now, because they are married, Grant has the ability to take Amanda to court for alimony when they divorce. Amanda has a decent amount of money, says Grant, which of course benefits him. Even if a divorce is far off, Amanda is funding Grant's career at this time, a goal he has been trying to fulfill since before I met him. Just before they were married, Grant threatened me over the phone, informing me that he would have full access to Amanda's money soon. "Whose money do you think it is?" he yelled to me. When I told him that I was afraid of him, I wasn't afraid of him anymore, and that I would be fighting him in court for my children, regardless of my financial situation. During the course of that conversation, he made it clear that I would lose our court case, and he would win because in the court system, the person with the most money wins. Another touch point is when Grant said, "I should pimp her." I won't. In regard to Amanda and Kenny Chesney, Grant said that Kenny had a crush on Amanda while they were all three in the Virgin Islands. And I'm not quoting Grant on this, but part that it is his implication from the conversation that if Kenny was in Amanda's pocket and Amanda was in Grant's pocket, Grant was as good as famous. Grant complained to me of Amanda's saggy breast on one occasion when he was trying to convince me that their relationship was just for the betterment of our family's financial situation. On his Facebook page, he talks about Amanda to his friend. "I'm marrying this actress from the Stepford Wives. It is important from the Stepford Wives in a regard that states clearly that his interest in her are other than being the woman of his dreams." To summarize, Grant uses people, then trashes them. I can't see Grant and Amanda's relationship lasting very long. Not because I am bitter, but because Grant uses people for what he can and then moves on. Grant uses our children as a bargaining tool in social relationships. Grant uses our children as social currency. Grant told me in February of 2010 that he wanted to have 50 children by women of different races so that he could start an empire. He said it was the old way of building a business, referring to the Bible. He said it would probably take him until he was 70 years old to accomplish it. His whole family has heard about this scheme. He has told me about a daughter that he and Amanda plan to have. So I'm betting he wasn't kidding. He cares about keeping and growing his assets, quote, Gentle and Grant, into a retirement plan for himself. Amanda buys into his facade right now, but Grant won't keep it up. Once it's no longer necessary, he will start sleeping with whomever he can who can help him with his career. Grant is an alcoholic, a drug addict, chain smokes, and may have a personality disorder. He goes on and reports that in February 2009, Grant gave me Emily's number and I called her. She told me to run from Grant. I left Grant's parents' house and went to my friend Heidi's parents' home for the next couple of weeks. Grant's sister, Tina, also told me that I should run. She took me to the magistrate to take out a warrant for the assault. November 2009, Laura reports, Grant said that he would be able to partner with Amanda and teach her as a teacher and her as an investor to him. So he went back. She concludes with this comment. I am of the opinion that Grant has a personality disorder. After living with him for almost 4 years, I find a few labels that fit him, but one that is near perfect, sociopath. The others are narcissist, borderline personality, and psychopath. He likens himself to the main characters of these movies, 6 Degrees of Separation with Will Smith and the talented Mr. Ripley. Grant has told me that he is the character depicted in these movies. Now, you didn't get to actually see the talented Mr. Ripley, but you read the report that was presented to you that summarized the movie. Let me read to you a few comments from the report that Dr. Calloway prepared. During interviews, Grant rambled in his responses, requiring a refocus and a request to limit his verbosity. He was entertaining with his various stories and accounts of his experiences and seemed to enjoy recounting these various reports. Without limits, he seemed to have rambled extensively for quite some time. Grant was extremely negative at times, paranoid with regard to Laura, her character, and her alleged actions. It was confusing why he repeatedly sought to tell others, in addition to me, that Laura allegedly sexually transmitted diseases and her internet activity toward men should be characterized as prostitution. Dr. Wins was uncomfortable with the anger and rage he expressed verbally with one or more children present in her office. His anger towards Laura and these various actions where he is not wholly appropriate with regard to characterizations of her make him to appear to have a determined agenda. He reports he started drinking and doing cocaine alone and grew depressed and had support from his family. He tried ecstasy. It made him paranoid. He talked to a bartender about using cocaine to resolve the paranoia. She writes that Grant views the world as a dog-eat-dog place where one has to constantly be on guard, not to be taken advantage of. He expects interpersonal relationships to be highly competitive and adversarial, and not corroborative or acquiescent. He views the world as a threatening place and is suspicious of others. She goes on to conclude with this recommendation. It is recommended that Grant be referred to a psychiatrist for evaluation. regarding the question of a mood disorder or other possible explanations for the illogical, disturbed thinking he exhibits. A psychiatrist with expertise in treatment of addictions is recommended, and evaluation for medication is also recommended. It appears that Grant used multiple illegal drugs to self-medicate. An underlying mood or thought disorder, and evaluation by a psychiatrist knowledgeable about addiction and polysubstance abuse is recommended. Now, once Laura was discovered to have been missing, an anonymous caller called Crime Stoppers to make a report. Crime Stoppers is a business that accepts calls from individuals who, for whatever reason, may or may not want to be identified. In this instance, Crime Stoppers received a report from a man who advised them that he knew Grant Hayes, and Grant Hayes may be involved in Laura's disappearance. I want to read you the report that was made to Crime Stoppers. I played music and recorded a song with Grant Hayes in late 2007 or 2008, but quit dealing with him because he creeps me out. I only knew him for about 3 weeks, and during that time I practiced at his house a lot, but felt uncomfortable because of the type of friends that he had. I do not know if he has anything to do with his wife's disappearance, but it is possible. I said so because one night we were drinking, and we both went upstairs, and while we continued drinking, he told me that he chokes people. He said he was going to tell me something that I should promise that I would not tell anyone. Then he said that he killed a man when he was younger, but was never caught, and no one knew that he did. I did not go back to his house that night because I did not know what to make of what he had told me, and not seen him since. This is a man who was so afraid of Grant Hayes that he wouldn't even give Crime Stoppers his name. But we'll talk later about one of the significant things in this report is that Grant likes to choke people. One of the things that I would like to draw your attention to, after having made some effort to review the Grant Hayes that Laura was dealing with, the Grant Hayes that Dr. Calloway was dealing with, and the anonymous caller. I want you to recall a video that you saw in this case, and I'm not going to replay it again, but at 2:32 a.m. on Thursday morning, July the 14th, just hours after Laura had been killed, Grant Hayes is seen strolling through the aisle at the Walmart at Briar Creek in North Raleigh, acting as if he's buying milk and butter. He's strolling down the aisle, just as calm as he can be. But he's not buying milk and butter. What he's looking for is a reciprocating skill saw. It's striking how calm he was while he was planning to dismember Laura's body. This is a man who has traveled all over the country doing gigs or either pretending to do gigs. We know he's been to LA, New York, Tennessee, Florida, Hawaii. How many women do you suppose have simply gone missing in those cities when Grant Hayes was there either doing gigs or pretending to do gigs? The video that you saw of him walking down that aisle indicate that this was a man who hadn't made this same shopping trip before? I suggest to you that he knew exactly what he wanted, and the reason he knew exactly what he wanted because he had done it before. Now, Amanda's life and Grant's life intersected in St. John's in the Virgin Islands towards the end of October of 2009. Grant Hayes, the predator, had met Amanda Smith, the prey. The time that they met, Amanda had $188,000 in an investment account. By July 2013, Grant Hayes had gotten all of that money. He had sold all of her jewelry. They were being evicted from her apartment. Grant Hayes had taken her for everything that she was worth. She was left, she had had a baby, and talked with her daughter Shay about the need for her getting away from Grant. She knew that Grant couldn't take care of these children by himself, and that what needed to be done with the children was to turn them back over to Laura. Laura could look out for the children, but Grant couldn't do it, and Amanda was at the end of the road. There was nothing left for her. She had no money. She had no place to live. She ultimately ended up agreeing with Grant that they would live with his mother, with Grant's mother and father in Kinston. You heard a tape recording on Friday where Grant left a voicemail with his mother telling her that Grant, and Amanda and Lily will be moving in with you over the weekend. Would you rent me a storage unit? So we know at that point that the dispute between Grant and Laura over the custody of Grant, little Grant and General had been resolved in at least the mind, in Amanda's mind, certainly, and it appears that it had been resolved in Grant's mind, and that the boys would be going to live with Laura. At that time, as we approached July 13th, the day that the incidents began to escalate, this is what Attorney John Sargent had to say about Amanda. Recall that John Sargent was the lawyer from Kinston who had been representing Laura in the custody dispute. At Grant's trial, this is the exchange that occurred with Mr. Sargent. Mr. Sargent was asked a question. Mr. Sargent, yesterday when you were testifying, and I had asked you about basically the little over a year-long experience that you had in dealing with Laura Ackerson and assisting her during that time, did you discuss with her, or did you have knowledge about her relationship with Amanda Hayes? His answer was, yes, I did. He was asked, and did she express to you any animosity or hostility with regard to Amanda Hayes? This was his answer. She did not. In fact, during the time that I was representing her, one of the things we discussed is that Laura was actually more comfortable with Amanda being in the home with Mr. Hayes, mostly because their relationship, Laura during their relationship, Laura had done pretty much all the child care, the changing the diapers, the bathing, the day-to-day activities with the children, and Mr. Hayes had not participated a lot in that. And so she was a lot more comfortable knowing that Amanda was there and there was another adult helping with the day-to-day care for the children. So actually she felt more comfortable with Mr. Hayes' home because of Amanda, and I was not aware of any animosity between the two of them. I do know at one point in March of 2010, Laura actually sent a note, a thank you note to Amanda for the things that she had done for their children. I'd like to read you that thank you note. It's addressed to Amanda. The note on the card, pre-printed on the card, is thanks a million. This is what Laura wrote to Amanda. Amanda, thank you for being a positive force in the universe and an extreme blessing to my family. I am grateful to you for several reasons, but to name only a few, thank you for the plane ticket, the clothing and toys you've supplied, and especially for the time, effort, love, and concern you've shown my son. You are definitely appreciated more than you know. Best wishes, Laura. That brings us to July 13th, 2011. We know what kind of person Grant is. We know what kind of person Laura is. We know what kind of person Amanda is. And we know that Amanda and Laura are having a good relationship. Amanda is playing the role of the peacekeeper. She's trying to do what's best for little Grant in general. Laura wants to change the custody arrangement between her and Grant, and she's willing to fight for what she wants. Grant, on the other hand, is becoming more and more hostile towards her, and although at 3:37 p.m. on July 13th, the message that he left with his mother on the voicemail was that the custody dispute had been resolved and that he, Amanda, and Lily would be coming to live with the parents. And she didn't say that the boys would be going to live with Laura, but that was the implication. But on that afternoon, Laura has scheduled a meeting at Monkey Joe's with the boys for around 3 p.m. But she was busy with her work, and because of that, she was running late. She called Grant at 4:59 p.m. to tell him that she was on the way. That call, it has been determined, was made from somewhere around the Crabtree Valley area, probably a 10, maybe 15-minute drive from where Grant lived. There's been questions asked about how long would it take for her to have arrived at the apartment if the call was made at 4:59, and the officers have said whatever, 10, 15 minutes. But we also know that Laura had made a stop to eat. We don't know exactly where, but it appears that the tray of food that was later found on the floorboard of her car is one of those that comes from the food court at Crabtree Valley. It's not a McDonald's bag like you get through a drive-through, but it's a tray that you can seal to preserve the food that you haven't eaten. And it's laying on the floorboard of that car, implying that she stopped to eat, and the reason that she is running late is because she has taken the time to eat before she came for the visit. Now, it's at starting from that moment, from that telephone call at 4:59, we begin a difficult tracking of what happens thereafter. We know that the first call that Grant made after he got the call from Laura was to his voicemail number. You'll recall, nobody wanted to admit that that number, that 201 exchange, was a voicemail number. We finally got that out of Detective Falk well into the trial. He was the person who finally, after everyone had been asked, is that a voicemail system? He finally admitted that, yes, I called the number back in 2011, and it was a voicemail system. So for some reason, Grant felt the need to call his voicemail after he talked to Laura. Let's then start tracking just the telephone calls for the moment that took place after Grant called his 201 voicemail system. The next call I find them. The print is very tiny. The next call, he made the call to his voicemail system at 5:53. The next call that appears on the telephone records for Grant's telephone is a telephone call from, well, there's a telephone call here from Karen Berry from Texas. The next call that Grant makes on that cell phone number, from that cell phone number, is at 6:37 p.m. that afternoon, and that he calls Laura. The call lasts for 23 seconds. We don't know if he spoke to Laura or if he left a message on her voicemail, but what we do know is that Laura is not yet at the apartment. Grant is trying to locate her. At 6:49, he calls her again. A call that, this one lasts for 22 seconds. We don't know if he talked to her, if he left a message on the voicemail, but she's still not there. So Laura arrives at the apartment sometime after 6:49. The next call, there's a call in here from Grant's mother to his cell phone number at 6:59, but then his phone goes silent from 6:59 until 8:42 p.m. I want you, when you begin your deliberations, to ask to review these records. You're entitled to do that, and you're entitled to take all of these documents to the jury room. And because we have receipts, gas receipts, purchase receipts, and telephone records, I'd like for you to ask to take these documents to the jury room so that you can study them. Now, each party has to agree that you can take the documents to the jury room. I promise you that you have my permission to review these documents. If you don't get them, it's not because I've objected. Now, the next series, the very first call that Grant makes on his cell phone at 8:42, after a lapse of an hour and 42 minutes, is to his voicemail. This is a man who talks on the telephone just about every minute of the day. He is talking to somebody. He is calling. but for an hour and 42 minutes, he doesn't call anyone. Here's what's going on at that apartment. Laura has arrived at the apartment, but Grant has asked Amanda to take the boys into the bedroom in order that I can talk to Laura about the custody agreement or whatever it was that he wanted to talk to her about. But keep the boys in the bedroom so that they don't see that their mother is here and interrupt us. So Amanda is in the bedroom with little Grant and Gentle, and at some point she has to change Lily's diaper. So she walks out of the bedroom to the kitchen area and sees that Grant and Laura have written out that custody agreement that in which Laura allegedly agreed to accept $25,000 in exchange for allowing Grant to keep custody of the boys. Amanda sees the agreement and turns around and walks away. As she's walking back towards the bedroom, Amanda asked, or Laura asked, if she can hold Lily, and Amanda continues on. Laura then comes up behind Amanda and apparently trips over the rug and bumps into her back. She yells out for Grant, and Grant comes over and grabs Laura from the rear and pulls her backwards to pull her away from Amanda. In the process of doing that, Grant and Laura fall over the chair somewhere around the kitchen table and land on the floor. Amanda goes on into the bedroom. Now, let's skip ahead for just a little bit and talk about the autopsy that was performed in Texas. Dr. Mambo was here, and he performed the first autopsy that was done. A second autopsy was later done in Chapel Hill by Dr. Radish. Dr. Mambo told you that what he discovered on the right back side of Laura's head was an injury that was of the nature that he would expect to see if someone fell backwards and struck their head on a hard object. It was a non-fatal injury. It is not the injury that resulted in her death. Grant then comes into the bedroom and tells Amanda that I want you to take the boys out of the house because Laura's injured. I'm going to call EMS, and I don't want the boys to see Laura in this condition. So what I, Grant, am going to do is to take her into the bathroom, and when she's in the bathroom, you take the boys out, let me call EMS, and take care of whatever the problem is that needs to be done for Laura. So Amanda leaves the house with the two boys and Lily. Now, you know that she was seen at 9:42 at the Chick-fil-A eating. She had ordered 2 children's meals and 2 adult meals and 2 Dr. Peppers. She's expecting to come back to the apartment with food for Grant. She and the children eat at the Chick-fil-A, but she leaves with the food that she is going to bring back to the apartment for Grant. She comes back, but Laura's car is still parked out front. So about that time, she's thinking that Grant has gone with the ambulance with Laura, and little Grant wants some food from the Chick-fil-A. So she leaves to go to the Chick-fil-A, and that's when you see the receipt showing that she was there at 9:42. When she comes back, Grant has been smoking pretty heavily, and she puts the children in bed. She comes back out, she puts her nightgown on, she comes back out, and she hears Grant talking on the telephone with his mother. Now, you'll recall that when his mother testified, she said there had been no other telephone calls after 3:37 p.m. on July 13th. But when you look at the telephone records, you will see that at 8:43, Grant has called his voicemail at 8:42 p.m. At 8:43 p.m., Grant's mother calls him, but there's zero. It indicates that there's been no connection. The time elapsed is 0. At 11:28 p.m., Grant calls his mother. She told you what her cell phone number was, 252-268-6639. He calls his mother at 11:28, but he doesn't get an answer. 25-second call. His mother is probably in bed, but hears the cell phone ring. He then calls his mother at 11:29 p.m., 1 minute later, and talks to her for 10 minutes and 12 seconds. He called then at 11:49 p.m. His mother calls him back and talks for 6 minutes and 45 seconds. During that period of time, Amanda has overheard Grant tell his mother, "I'll see you tomorrow morning." You also know from his mother that he had requested that she put some money in the bank for him because he needed gas money. Now, during that voicemail message at 3:37 p.m., he didn't say anything about needing gas money at all. What he said was that we're going to be moving to Kinston over the weekend. Could you rent me a storage unit? So during that, either one of or both of those conversations with his mother, just shortly before midnight, he's told her that I'm coming to Kinston tomorrow. I'll see you then. And he's also told her that he needs money for gas. Now, the next thing that happens is Grant leaves the apartment, and we then switch from the telephone records to the record of his purchases for the next several days. The record of his purchases reveal to you Grant's thought processes as the next 3 days are going by. The first thing he does when he leaves the apartment that night is he drives from the apartment to the BP station, and he buys $29.18 worth of gas. Now, the state will say, well, you don't know that he bought gas, but what do you buy at a gas station? He's bought $29.18 worth of gas. And then, when he drives out onto Glenwood Avenue, the apartment where they live is out close to the airport. In order to get to the Walmart at Briar Creek, he would have to make a right turn and drive about 5 miles north. But that's not what he did. He went out and he made a left turn, and he went to the BP station, he got gas, and from there he went to the Black Flower. The Black Flower is a bar in downtown Raleigh on West Peace Street. He went approximately 8 miles in the opposite direction of the Walmart. Why did he go there? We know he withdrew $140 in cash from the ATM machine, but who has Grant met at the Black Flower? Is he trading messages on his voicemail system? It's a simple system that drug users and drug abusers use to contact each other. You call the voicemail, you leave a simple message. Your friend who has the same code calls the same voicemail. You pick up the message. It's how drug dealers who are trying to hide from the police are able to make contact with each other. Maybe he makes contact with somebody at the Black Flower, or maybe he doesn't. We don't really know. But what we do know that during the night that Grant comes back into the apartment, Amanda hears him come in, but she's in bed. She doesn't get up to see what he's doing, and then he leaves again. The next time that he appears in a spot where we can track him is at the Walmart when he buys the reciprocating skill saw. You see on the videotape, he also bought one pair of goggles. He bought some other items, but all of the items that he bought are items that indicate to you that Grant Hayes is making preparations to dismember Laura's body. Now, he's told Amanda that he went to Kinston. He was going to Kinston that next morning to see his mother. He told his mother he'll see her in Kinston. We know that during the next 3-day period that he's bought 30 gallons of gas, $104 worth of gas at $3.45 a gallon equals 30 gallons of gas, and allows him to drive a total of 597 miles during that 3-day period. He bought gas on 3 different occasions, once at the BP station, once at the Kangaroo station, and again at the Sheets station in Wilson on Friday afternoon. He comes back to Raleigh, and when he arrives in Raleigh the next morning at around 11 o'clock. Both Amanda and Shay are there when he gets back. Now, that's when Shay came over and took the boys over to Monkey Joe's. They were supposed to have gone to Monkey Joe's at 3 o'clock the day before. They didn't get to go, so she had promised that they could go the next morning. Amanda's first call, Grant has left. They only have one working cell phone at that point. Her cell phone, which is the one with the 8581, it ends with the digits 8581, has run out of minutes. You know that she bought minutes for that cell phone at 10:23 p.m. on a Thursday night from a company called Vesta. Her cell phone had been silent for days because she didn't have any minutes on it. At 10:33 p.m. that Thursday night, she makes her first call on her cell phone, the 8581 exchange. But Grant has left the cell phone behind at the apartment that night. We also know that he has a prepaid cell phone somewhere because the empty box for the prepaid cell phone shows up in the garbage container when the police search it a couple of weeks later. Now, at 5:31 p.m. on that Thursday, Amanda goes to the Target and to buy groceries, but Grant has also asked her to pick up some bleach while you're there. Now, the state contends that Laura must have been murdered while she was in that bathroom. But bear this in mind. I suppose they contend that she was killed and that her body was dismembered while she was in that bathroom. Bear in mind, no one in the apartment complex ever heard a reciprocating skill saw running in that apartment any time during this period of time. Bear in mind that the bathroom was cleaned sometime after the bleach was bought, but the reason that the bathroom was being cleaned was because Gentle had messed the bathroom floor up. Grant had previously cleaned it, but hadn't done a very good job, so he's cleaning it again, but he's using bleach. Now, we know from the police investigation that there was no blood whatever located in that bathroom. Let me show you an exhibit. I can find it. That bathroom is clean. The floor is clean. But when the police got there, they sprayed the entire room with a substance called luminol. And what happens if there is blood present, or if there is blood that has been cleaned up, the luminol, here's what happens when you spray a room with luminol that has previously been cleaned. This, on the left-hand side of this exhibit, you see a carpet that has been perfectly clean. But when you spray luminol on that same carpet, the side where that has been, what the exhibit demonstrates is that the luminol lights up like a neon light. Even though it's been cleaned up, what you can't clean up is the iron that's contained in blood. The luminol reacts to the iron and shows you where blood has previously been. Now, the police even removed the molding from around the floor in the bathroom. There was no blood under the molding. There was no blood on the linen in the closet. There was no blood on the walls. There was no blood on the ceiling. There was no blood anywhere in that room. Not a single drop anywhere. Now, here's something else about that bathroom. You'll recall, skipping ahead a little bit, Dr. Ross, the anthropologist from North Carolina State University, had, in order to match the saw blades to the saw that Grant had used, she had to dismember a pig. She used a pig proxy. And what she didn't do that in her laboratory. She took the pig out to someplace in the field and dismembered the pig so that they could match the bone, the striations on the pig's bones to the striations on Laura's bones. Now, let me show you, let me tell you this first, and I want to use the skill saw to demonstrate this. In that bathroom, there is not a single indention indicating that a skill saw has been used in that bathroom. Dr. Ross told you that when she examined Laura's body, that it was necessary that when she was dismembered, that it was difficult to cut through the bones, and she described what she saw several times as false starts. What's happening when you're trying to cut through something that's hard is that you start cutting, but the saw comes to a stop because you're not in the right spot or whatever. So you start again. It's like cutting a tree limb. You start until you get going. So she saw on Laura's bones several false starts. She described the bones as being hard to cut. What it takes is a great deal of pressure from a skill saw or any kind of saw, whether it's a chainsaw or a reciprocating skill saw or whatever, to cut through a hard substance. Let me show you what happens when you're trying to cut through a hard substance. And bear in mind that on this bathroom floor, there's not a single, not even one scratch to indicate that it's ever been touched by a skill saw or any kind of sharp substance. Here's what happens. I'm not going to start this thing up, I promise you. But let's assume, I'm sure that some of you have used saws in the past, and you know cutting trees down or whatever. If you're cutting through a hard substance, what you're doing is you're pressing down because it's difficult to do the cut. You're pressing down, and you have to keep pressing hard because the substance is hard, and you've got to get through all the way through the substance. When you get through that substance, what happens is you're pushing down, and the blade goes down. It goes down because you're pushing. And what it does when it goes down is that it cuts into whatever it is that is below the substance, whether it's the tile in a bathroom floor or whether it's dirt out in the woods. The pressure of pushing down on that saw cannot prevent you from making indentions in whatever is below that substance. And there's not the first indication that a skill saw blade ever touched the floor of that bathroom. It's kind of a common comparison that perhaps we all know about is in your home you have chopping boards. If you're chopping up onions with a knife, the purpose for the chopping board is that when you get through an onion or whatever, it leaves an indentation on the chopping board. That's okay. That's what it's meant to do. But you don't go over and chop your onions up on your dining room table, because it's going to do the same thing to your dining room table that it would have done to the cutting board. I promise you, if any of you decide you're going to cut any onions up on your dining room table, either your husband or your wife is going to make a pretty strong objection. And that's the reason, is because it goes through the substance, and when it does, it leaves a mark on whatever the material is that's below the substance. So in all of these photographs, and you asked to see them, there is no blood in that bathroom. There is not a single indication that the saw blade ever touched the floor. It would have been impossible to dismember Laura's body without that blade going through the bone and the tissue and striking whatever was below it. I suggest to you that her body was dismembered someplace else, apparently in Kinston. And we're going to follow his thought processes based on his purchases to show you how that has to be the case. The point that I'm making is that Grant Hayes and Grant Hayes alone killed Laura. Amanda didn't help him. She's looking out for two little boys and her baby. But when you track Grant and you recognize the pattern of his purchases, you can tell exactly what he's done and where he did it. Okay, let's start first. He's bought a skill saw and a pair of goggles at the Walmart at 2:32 a.m. on July the 14th. I'm going to back up and make one point that I forgot to make. During the night, Amanda hears Grant come back into the room, or into the house, into the apartment, but she doesn't get up. Beneath the dining room table, in photographs that were taken prior to July 13th and were retrieved from Amanda's camera, there is a black rug beneath that table. It's a large black rug that's identical in color to the small black rugs that you saw. Next morning, when Amanda got up, the rug was gone. When Grant got back home at about 11 o'clock that morning, she asked him what happened to the rug that was beneath the table. And he told her, I threw it away. The children had messed it up, and I just threw it out. It had been there the day before. By the next morning, it was gone. I suggest to you that the way that Grant has gotten her body out of the bathroom, where he either killed her in the bathroom or perhaps in the kitchen, the way he got her body out was by using the rug to go down the stairwell. It's two short distances directly from the door of the apartment. Right next to the door, you'll recall the testimony, the stairs go down one level, and then you turn, they go down a second level directly to the parking lot. Grant Hayes, either by himself or through the help of a friend, could have taken her body out of that apartment in probably less than 60 seconds by rolling her up in the rug. Now, let's look at one of the, let me say this first about the purchase at the Walmart at 2:32 Thursday morning. He bought a skill saw, goggles, and some other items, and he paid cash. Everything on this list that Grant didn't want somebody to know about, he paid for with cash. When he bought gas, he used a credit card. When he bought other innocuous items, he used a credit card. But when he bought any item that involved the dismemberment of Laura's body or the disposal of Laura's body, he used cash. Let's just track him. Thursday night, he's returned from Kinston. He spent the day at home. He's asked Amanda to buy some bleach while she's at the Target grocery shopping. When she gets back, of course, remember they only have one car, the one Dodge Durango. At 8:45 p.m. that Thursday night, July 14th, Grant Hayes is captured on the Apple store at Crabtree Valley. And what is he buying? He's buying an adapter cord, an electrical adapter cord for a MacBook Pro. He has previously listed his MacBook Pro on Craigslist in an effort to sell it. Shay told you that the Apple was in working order. It had an adapter cord. But at 8:45 p.m., he buys a new adapter cord at the Apple store, and he pays cash. He doesn't want that purchase tracked. Here's what I suggest to you has happened. He has sent Amanda out with the children. She's gone to the Chick-fil-A. By the time she gets back, Grant Hayes has strangled Laura with the Apple adapter cord. And he's disposed of it someplace, probably in Kinston. That's why they can't find it in Raleigh. It's gone. He needed a new adapter cord for his Apple computer so that he could sell it on Craigslist. The police later located that Apple computer from the person who purchased it, and it, of course, had an adapter cord. You don't necessarily know that it's exactly the same one, but you know that he needed one for some reason that very next night after he had strangled Laura. The next purchase that is significant in following Grant's thought processes occurs at 12:25 p.m. on Friday afternoon. On Friday afternoon, he goes to the Walmart and he buys 6 duffel bags. And again, he pays cash. What's he thinking? He's going to dismember Laura's body, and his plan is to put the body parts in the duffel bags. So now he has 6 duffel bags in his possession. Shortly after that, 2 or 3 hours after that, he has to go to Wilson to deliver the boys to Laura. Laura's supposed to pick up the 2 boys at the Sheetz gas station, or she doesn't show up. He comes, brings the boys back home, and on Friday night, he disappears again. You know that he's not at home because Amanda, who now has some minutes on her cell phone, is trying to call him some between like 10 and 11 o'clock on that Friday night. Now, in the meantime, Grant has told Amanda, let's take a trip to Texas. It's his idea to go to Texas, and what we're going to do is go see your sister Karen, because your mother died in July in June, at about the same time that Lily was born, and you haven't seen her in a while, so let's plan a trip to Texas. And Amanda calls her sister and asks, is it okay if me, Grant, and Lily come to Texas? The boys, she wasn't planning for the boys to come because she thinks that Laura's going to be picking the boys up at the Sheetz for the weekend. Later, she finds out that Laura didn't pick up the boys, and she calls Karen back and asks Karen, is it okay if the boys come too? She also asked, is it okay if I bring that piece of furniture that I've got in storage? It was Grant's idea to take the piece of furniture to Texas. In a moment, will talk about exactly what the process is here on why he wants that hutch to go with him to Texas. He goes to he leaves that Friday night, and one of the places that he stops at approximately 11:25 is that same BP station where he had stopped just the day before and bought gas. And he tries to buy some phone cards, but the cashier rings up 200 minutes of phone cards for $4. Well, you can't buy 200 minutes of phone cards for $4, and the receipt indicates that the transaction was canceled. But the credit card numbers doesn't have the whole number on the card, but his credit card number ends in the digits 4655, I believe it's 4655. At 11:25, it appears that he's at that same BP gas station trying to buy phone minutes for a prepaid cell phone. The very same prepaid cell phone that where you find the box later in the trash. Now, the next time that Grant appears is again on video. And again, he's using cash. You'll recall that the lady from the U-Haul store on Capitol Boulevard saw him the next day, and he told her that he had been up all night. He appeared to be, in her words, punch drunk. The next morning at 6:48 a.m., he's at the Walmart at Briar Creek. And what does he buy? And again, he's used cash. He buys a cooler and 3 bags of ice. Now we know that in the container later they find 6 bags of ice, so he's bought 3 more bags someplace else. But now we know that on Thursday morning, when he bought the skill saw, that he's thinking about dismembering Laura's body. At 12:25 on Friday afternoon, he's thinking about how is he going to transport the dismembered body. At 6:48 a.m. on Saturday, he is buying not more duffel bags. Now he's buying ice and a cooler. And he returns 3 of the duffel bags that he had previously bought. So now he needs the ice and the cooler because he has in fact dismembered Laura's body someplace between Kinston and the Walmart at Briar Creek. We know that he has plenty of places in Kinston where he could have done it. Although the state contended that all those rental properties that we found didn't exist, his mother confirmed that they do exist, and we also know that there are 4 vacant lots down there. We also know that he has all over the place what he calls his goons who can help him get rid of anybody with 1 telephone call. So he's back at the Walmart and he buys ice and coolers with cash. He doesn't want anybody to know that that's where he's been. Now, the police have tracked him using videotapes. So between the videotapes and the credit card purchases, you know exactly where Grant has been. And he's by himself at every moment. From the Walmart from the Walmart at Briar Creek to the Walmart on Glenwood Avenue, back to the Walmart at Briar Creek on that Saturday morning. He's always by himself, and he's making plans to dismember Laura's body, and he's now, on Saturday morning, he's making plans to transport her body. In the meantime, he's talked to Amanda about taken that hutch from Raleigh to Texas to give to her sister. But he's got to have a U-Haul trailer now because he doesn't have a hitch on the Dodge Durango. Yeah, so he's got to go get a hitch. And then he rents the U-Haul trailer. After he rents the U-Haul trailer, he goes to the storage unit where the hutch is stored. And what does he do? He gets someone at the U-Haul or at the storage unit to help him take that piece of furniture out of the U-Haul. It's heavy and it's in two pieces. And what does he do at that point? If this is the back of the U-Haul, you saw pictures of it. It's not a tremendously huge U-Haul. But he takes the hutch and in two pieces, he puts it in the front of the U-Haul trailer. He's concealing whatever it is that's behind that hutch. And then he puts a padlock on the door. He has concealed everything that he has done for 3 days from Amanda and from everyone else in the world. He's gone to great efforts to make sure that nobody knows, not Amanda, not the police, no one knows that he has killed Laura and that he has dismembered her body. There is absolutely no evidence that Amanda participated in his strangulation of Laura. The evidence is to the contrary, that she thought that Laura had been injured when she fell over the chair. Now, you also have, according to the autopsy, or I think according to Dr. Ross, you have a knife wound, a point of a knife in Laura's throat. I suggest to you that the purpose for that knife wound is that Grant has cut Laura's throat before he dismembered her body. You'll recall that the goggles that he had bought from the Walmart at Briar Creek were found in the trash dumpster. There was no blood on the goggles. You'll recall that his shirt was found in the trash dumpster, dirty, but with no blood on it. You'll recall that his underwear, the same kind of underwear that were later found at Kinston when he returned from Texas, were found in the dumpster with dirt right around the top of them. Dirty underwear, a dirty shirt, and goggles, all with no blood on. What Grant Hayes has done in order to prevent the spray of blood, as Dr. Radish told you, when you cut up a body, that the body has 5 quarts of blood in it. In order to avoid the spray of blood and the need for goggles, he has stuck a knife in her throat, and he has cut her throat and has drained the blood from her body. That's why he didn't need to cover his face when he dismembered her body. Now, at that point, he buys 2 more coolers in Raleigh, and on Saturday night, he wakes up Amanda and the kids. We're ready to go to Texas. He has the U-Haul packaged and sealed. Laura's body is in the back of that U-Haul, but Amanda doesn't know it. What she does know is that the hutch that she's going to be given to her sister is in the front of the U-Haul, concealing everything that's behind it. She does know that he has put a lock on the U-Haul door. You'll recall seeing the empty lockbox in the trash container when the police found the goggles and the dirty shirt and the dirty underwear. They were all together. So they begin their trip to Texas, and then after driving for some period of time, Amanda decides that they have to stop and get some rest. They stop at a Motel 6 and register using Amanda's New York driver's license. Now, the state made a big deal out of this, that Amanda was attempting to register at that motel under an assumed name. She should have used her North Carolina driver's license if she didn't want anybody to know that it was her. It took a lot of questioning to finally get them to admit that there was no North Carolina driver's license. There had never been a North Carolina driver's license. The only driver's license that Amanda had was her New York driver's license, and it was still in the name of Amanda Smith. That's the driver's license that was used to register at the Motel 6. There's been no effort on Amanda's part to conceal anything from anyone. On that trip, Grant tells Amanda, "I had a dream that I killed Laura and that you're next." They arrive in Texas Monday morning, early in the morning, and you've seen a photograph that was taken from the iPod, from one of the iPods, I don't remember which one. But Amanda and Karen are there at Karen's house, and she's very happy. Karen is very happy. They're holding Lily. In another photograph, Amanda is drinking coffee. Everything is perfectly fine. There is no hint of any problem. Amanda tells Karen, "We have to be back in North Carolina by Friday because that's when we have to turn the boys back over to Laura." Everything appears to be perfectly normal. That night, Amanda sees Grant in the yard, pacing the yard and smoking. So she goes out to talk to him in the yard.
Your Honor? Sir? Okay.
Can't hear?
Take a break? All right, everybody. We'll stop right now. Take about 10 minutes. Don't discuss the matter with yourself. Keep it in mind. Dickie Dutchison, Chair. Thanks for telling us. We'll be back in about 10 minutes. All right, the jury's asked. About an hour and a half, just for your knowledge. All right, I'll be in recess for 2 minutes. Thank you.
Supreme Court is in recess 10 minutes.